Senator Wright.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. While not necessarily essential for physical survival, I believe that an independent, quality public broadcaster, free from commercial influence, is essential for the survival of our own quintessentially Australian culture and to provide the reliable, accurate information which is the currency of democracy. That's an excerpt from my first speech to the Senate, delivered in August 2011. I went on to say, I watch with concern as many of the qualities of the ABC we fought for in the 1990s are now under threat by decisions that are being made in 2011. Exchange 2011 for 2014, and the situation is now even worse. My advocacy for strong, independent, properly funded public broadcasting has been ongoing for 20 years. In the late 1990s, I passionately fought to save the ABC from vicious attacks and funding cuts from the Howard government, who had been elected on a lie that they would not cut the funding of the ABC. Within months of gaining office, they cut $50 million from the ABC and commissioned a review to cut further. The Mansfield Review, on the contrary, found that Australians value their public broadcast to such an extent that would make commercial corporations envious. But here we go again, and this time the cuts will be proved to be so vicious and so ideologically driven that John Howard's attempts will look like a mere trim. Prior to the 2013 election, the Coalition made a clear and unambiguous promise that the ABC funding would not be cut. Many of us feared that that was a farce, and so it has proved to be, with a 1% cut to the recurrent funding in the May budget. The Managing Director, Mark Scott, reported after this that it will have an effect of $120 million over 4 years, with more to come. And it seems there is much more to come. So far we've seen the abolition of the Australia Network, and there are reports that the ABC management has been configuring losses of 500 jobs on the back of a further $50 million cut. But there may be even more jobs at risk. Some reports suggest that figures as high as $100 million are being floated. Certainly ABC sources are saying the situation is very dire. After all, the Institute of Public Affairs, the right-wing think tank that writes much of the Abbott government's policy, had a clear checklist of 75 radical ideas to transform Australia, and pride of place at number 50 was break up the ABC and put out to tender each individual function. Why does it matter? Because information is the currency of democracy. Without reliable, accurate information, how can any citizen be confident that in exercising their vote or in forming their opinions they are exercising a real choice? Just ask the citizens of Putin's Russia right now. I heard an interview with Keir Giles on ABC's Radio National this morning, which brought home to me the fundamental importance of having a reliable, accurate media that's independent of government and independent of other influences like commercial influences. He was being interviewed by Fran Kelly on Breakfast, and she put to him the suggestion that there's definitely a Russian-backed rebel advance in the east of Ukraine. Keir Giles said, and I've pretty much quoted from the interview, "The striking thing about this is how it looks from Moscow. Even the military advance looks very different when you look at it through the distorting mirror of Russian media treatment. We've been talking to Russian friends and colleagues, civilian and military, and the striking thing is how over there they're living in a parallel reality. It looks entirely different. What is going on down there? They're only now just learning about the scale and extent of the Russian involvement there and the nature of the conflict, simply because Russian soldiers are coming back dead and injured when they are supposed to have been sitting in their bases. They really don't understand the situation or the scale of the conflict." He said, "I'm talking about the ordinary Russians, the educated, intelligent ones who are seeing things through the prism of the Russian media. We hear the most bizarre things coming from them. One example is They're convinced that there will soon be a full-scale military attack, not just on Russia, but also on Scotland, because Scotland is having its own separatist referendum, and obviously England will be wanting to exert its territorial integrity. So the picture for the citizens is ripe for the kinds of statements about nuclear weapons that President Putin has been issuing lately. And that's a really clear indication of the degree to which we rely on accurate, independent information in a democracy to understand the choices that we really have to make. The concentration of media ownership in Australia has never been more serious, which means that that source of information is concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. In the South Australian situation, I'm extremely concerned. The ABC is extremely important to regional areas of Australia. One of the reasons that I fought so passionately to support the ABC in the 1990s was that the ABC is a voice that can unify Australia. It's our own independent cultural broadcaster. It captures the lived experience, the reality for Australians throughout Australia, and it is pluralistic. It actually appeals to and represents the various interests that Australians have, whether it's classical music, whether it's local radio, whether it's country radio, whether it's bush telegraph, which is joining country people to city people so city people can have an understanding about what it's like to live in rural areas. There are programs about culture, there are programs about religion, there are programs about popular music, there is the sport. Every Australian has a favourite aspect of ABC radio and television. At the ABC in Adelaide in South Australia, there are 408 staff employed. About 350 of those staff are in Adelaide, and reports indicate that 150 of those jobs are currently at risk. If those jobs go, the ABC's ability to represent the people of South Australia will be severely curtailed. The recent Lewis Review presents a substantial risk to the size and functionality of the ABC Adelaide operation. ABC Adelaide is one of the last ABC regional offices to retain internal TV production capacity. But the Lewis Review into ABC and SBS efficiency has an executive summary which was leaked to News Corp and Fairfax and reportedly showed that the ABC could save $70 million through back-of-house efficiencies and by outsourcing production to the private sector. The Lewis Review made various recommendations which, if implemented, would have a direct impact on Adelaide. So, outsourcing of the ABC payroll, which is run from Adelaide and employs more than 60 staff. Outsourcing other support, admin and commercial functions, which employ an estimated 30 staff. And the axing of ABC internal TV production, which estimates indicate could directly impact more than 20 jobs and have indirect impacts on a further 30 to 40 jobs. It's not clear at this point what impact in jobs or services may flow from other Lewis Review recommendations, which includes selling studios and outside broadcast fans and discontinuing digital radio. The government and the public are already getting more from less when it comes to ABC output. In 1996, the ABC budget accounted for approximately 0.44% of total government expenditure. By 2012, this had fallen to around 0.28% of total government expenditure. In the 1980s, the ABC employed 6,000 staff. Now it's just 4,600, a 23% reduction. Among 18 major Western countries, Australia has the 5th lowest level of funding for public broadcasting. Our public broadcaster, considering the range of services and platforms that it provides the Australian public, is lean and mean. Funding to the ABC and SBS is only 50% of the average in comparable countries, and yet the quality is still the quality of Radio National, the debate, the discussion, the information that's available there, the quality of the programs that we are able to see that are produced in Australia on ABC television are still so extremely good despite those efficiencies. The cuts and the savings that we've so far heard about are just the beginning. My colleague, Senator Scott Ludlam, has made an order for the production of documents asking the Communications Minister to publish the secret Lewis Efficiency Review. The Minister was due to provide the review by today, but it was not done. Again, we see secrecy. Again, we see that information is the currency of democracy. We need to have that information so that we know what is going on in Australia. That's why public broadcasting is so important.
Thank